those under 40, it's similar to the DAP, but at waist height.
In Germany, it would appear that that's probably not a totally sensitive name to be bandying around.
I think James went up to his elbow in the back seat.
Yeah, well, obviously it's nice having
If you've got a Subaru, it cleans out the Labrador smell.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural Pro Detailer Magazine podcast. We have decided to start a podcast to basically give a voice to the magazine, and hopefully we'll be able to interest and entertain, and I dare say educate through our little podcast. I'm going to introduce the team first of all. We are being joined here by James Keeley.
Good afternoon, morning, evening, podcast, there's no time.
And we're also here with Ian Seeley.
I'm going to confirm it is morning. It's a Sunday morning, and I'm not sure why I'm awake.
So we three essentially put together the vast majority of the magazine in various different angles, and we've been collectively working on it for 5 odd years now, so we know each other too well.
5 very odd years.
Very odd years indeed. And the idea of this podcast is we want to use it as an opportunity to approach sort of topical things that we can't with just 2 magazines a year. So things that are in the detailing news or in the sort of the detailing environs, so to speak. And also just to kind of create a little bit of a regular update for people. We're all car enthusiasts.
Are they friends of the Zootons?
I don't know who the Zootons are.
Well, friends of the environs, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, well...
Doctor Who
Oh, are they?
monster, aren't they?
Oh.
The flashy lights that come down from the ceiling.
Not the angels.
This is the voice of the environ.
That was Captain Scarlet, by the way.
In time, you realise that I have very little cultural awareness of stuff, and there are always references that I just look blank at, but that's just because I'm stupid. What I'm thinking is this is really for car fans, for detailing fans, for talking fans. We aim to have a bit of debate with different opinions, different perspectives on things. And in each and every podcast, we want to have like a main theme, and then we have little extras that we probably just think about, and then we'll have regular bits and bobs. So to get to know us, I thought we were going to kick off with a little bit of car chat. We all drive cars, as you can imagine. Some of us drive less quality cars than others. But I want to introduce here James to start with, because you've bought an old BMW for a couple of £100 that you're terribly excited about. Tell us about it.
Well, it's another E34, so it's joining the long list of terrible BMWs and terrible decisions that I've made in the last few years.
James is very BMW. You must have had, 30 plus BMWs in your years?
Oh, I don't think it's that many, but it's in the 20s.
Yes.
I'll try. I'm trying.
The highlight, of course, was an E34 M5 3.8 6-speed manual, wasn't it?
5-speed. The quick one.
The quick one, apparently.
Yeah. 6-speed was restricted to 155. The 5-speed would do 176.
And what's the engine code on that? Actually, I don't care. So, moving on, that's one side of it. Now, Ian's current ride is an appropriate ride for anyone in their twilight years who likes to play golf.
Or sell cocaine.
Or sell cocaine.
I've never actually managed to fit a set of golf clubs in the boot of the car.
Do you own golf clubs?
Of course I own golf clubs.
Oh, okay. Well, there goes half my jokes. Because I know James is on to
So
golf.
we're down to 1 then.
Yes. Significantly reduced. But no, I have to admit, I was very cynical when Ian bought his A5 because it's sort of an impractical A4, but it's in a rather lovely colour. What's the name of the colour of your car?
Oh, I can't remember stuff like that.
It's kind of cobalty blue.
No, I did know it. It's like an anthracite-y, greeny. I think it's Krypton
blue.
Krypton purple. So I don't know. It's got metallic stuff in there. You can see it underneath the scratches if you look hard enough.
Well, it has grown on me. It's quite a fun car, and we're yet to see James's car thanks to COVID restrictions.
It's probably going to remain that way. It's I still haven't actually looked underneath the chassis yet. So
probably safe, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it's slightly saggy on one side.
Okay,
but you know, you don't notice when you're sat inside.
You hit 30 and it just happens, isn't it?
I'm taking back to the Fast show decision. Selling a car is like making love to... Never mind. So...
More importantly, Bert...
Yes.
I've seen you sell a car before, so really says so.
How's your car situation doing?
Well, I've got 4 lovely, lovely cars.
Where are they?
Any roadworthy ones, or...?
So one is, it's out of MOT at the moment, but
That's not roadworthy then?
Well, it is because of the lockdown. We don't have to get it MOT'd. Mine conveniently ran out in April, and it's my £1,500 environmentalist Audi. So it's a 3.7 V8 petrol, down from the other Audi that I've got, which is a 4.2 V8 petrol. That works, but that's also out of MOT because the brake lights don't work, and I've left it down in a shed in Hampshire.
Also, only a 4.2 and all cylinders are working, so.
It works. It works. Just the lights don't work. They keep blowing bulbs. I need to fiddle it.
What's the Subaru situation?
Subaru situation is, well, I've got to be careful because otherwise I'm going to start crying. But effectively, there's Boris, the 300,000 mile Outback that we went down to the bottom of Europe and back again in now 2 summers ago.
Triggers Broom then, that one.
Yeah, if you want to call it that. And
it's the nicest name, to be fair.
Yeah. That went in for a top-end rebuild 18 months ago, and is currently, it's also had an axle lift. I've done all sorts of anti-rust stuff because most of it was rust. So it's got new subframes on. It's got new springs and shocks down from Australia, and it's got a 3-inch lift on it and big off-road tyres and lots of other really cool Butch Ray Mears stuff. However, it doesn't have the extra long braided brake lines that I've had specially built for it actually fitted. So currently it is also in a field not working. And
sorry, Ray Mears isn't the Butch one, can I just say? He's the geography teacher of the sort of outdoor survivalist world.
Who's the one who got
eaten? Bear Grylls is the slightly Butch one.
He's short, he's not Butch. Who's the one who got eaten by a stingray?
Steve Irwin.
Steve Irwin. I thought he was.
He didn't get eaten by a stingray.
Didn't he?
No.
He
got stabbed by a stingray.
They've got very flat mouths underneath them.
I was always wondering about that when that first happened.
Not Australians. We like Australians.
Because I thought manta rays were bigger, and even they can't eat a human. But anyway, I mean, moving on. And then we've got the Uncrashable 2, who hasn't been crashed. But
well, it's hard to crash.
Not by you, anyway.
Not by me. No, it did actually.
Previous owners definitely.
Yes.
Yes. The filler kind of gives that away.
Yeah, it's all killer, no filler, but with a bit of filler.
And it is quite difficult to crash it whilst it's sat on a driveway telling knock jokes to itself.
Can't crash it if the brakes are seized.
It's what happens when you take a stock 2 litre and put in almost double the power it came out the factory with. So that's needing a new forged bottom end putting on it, and I don't have the money for that at the moment. So yeah, it's VOD is the only working car, the £1,500 3.7 Eco-Mentalist Audi A8 D2,
which did come from a scrapyard.
It was 10 minutes from being crushed because they thought the gearbox had gone, and then A8 genius came along, reset the codes, and found out that actually it was absolutely fine, and took the car away for tuppence and used it as a courtesy car, which is where I first met him. And I fell in love, and then for £1,500 I walked away with him.
To be fair, I actually quite like VOD because it's the only Audi that burns more oil than my one.
No, that only when new, as in when I got it, not new, when it was 20 years old.
Only when you took possession of it, does it start going wrong and burning oil and becoming a money pit?
I haven't put oil in that car for about 6 months.
Because you haven't been driving it for 3 of those months.
No.
It doesn't really count. I haven't put oil in my car for the last 3 months because it's done approximately 20 miles to Asda and back.
I've done a worrying amount of miles, so it gets used. My partner uses it. It does the weekly shop and it does the deliveries and stuff like that. So.
Right. Anyway, we're getting into my car burns less oil than your car competition here.
You're getting nervous over there.
Well,
let's move on.
You know, the out of my cars, only one of them uses a little bit of oil.
Well, a couple of them you have to pour oil into the diesel tank because it's a diesel and not like proper.
Yes. But that's not the point.
It says heavy oil on the V5C form, doesn't it?
Yeah, and your Subarus say Fuji Heavy Industry on the
it also
plates.
Yeah, and to be fair, it does say rigid axle, and I'm like, mine's not rigid.
may have been at one point.
I haven't had a good rigid axle since 1997. So, shall we move on from that before it goes downhill? And let's move on to the whole COVID debate, because that is the topic of the moment, and in our industry there is an awful lot of misinformation going around. There's lots of different opinions, and that's perfectly fair in my opinion. Everybody's entitled to an opinion, and just as much as they have to respect other people's opinions. But I remember when it first happened, everybody's like, oh, you can't work. If you work, you're murdering people. And then we had the whole, if you don't work, you're Mother Teresa and saving people every day of the week. And then we had, we're going to clean your car out of COVID by using steam, and we're going to guarantee there's no COVID in there. That's not a particularly strong line. And then we had, we're going back to work, and we're perfectly entitled to, which legally I think we were.
Legally, yeah.
But whether morally, whether in the spirit of the law, whether customers could bring cars to you. You might be entitled to go to work and be able to do that, and if you can socially distance, but are customers able to make a non-essential journey to get their car cleaned? So there was lots of anger and a lot of passion, because we had a mixture of people who I think were genuinely scared of the COVID thing, which is absolutely fair enough. It's killed 36,000 people at least so far, so in this country alone. And I know some people have got parents and or vulnerable, spouses and stuff like that.
I'll just point out that everybody has parents.
No, I think you'll find that everybody had parents, but never mind.
That's a little bit defeating.
It's just a little bit defeated, isn't it?
Is there something you need to tell me? Do I need to go and phone home?
I part X'd mine for a Seat Leon.
And which is totally fair enough, but again, it's easy to get blown out of proportion, because on the flip side, over the Atlantic, we've got Mr. Trump, who's injecting himself with this, that, and the other, thinking that he's catching malaria or something.
Light.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think we should. I think you'll find it's flaming Cheetos. Actually, that's the tone that he goes for. But I think this should be a Trump-free zone.
Okay.
In fact, I think it should be a politics-free zone.
I think America should be a Trump-free zone.
No, I think we should be politics-free, because everybody, opinions are like bomb holes. Everybody's got one. Some people have got two.
Really? Who's got two bumholes?
Well, the people that talk
Out there.
constantly.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense now. That's logical. Interesting. So what we were thinking about is going through and just thinking about how one can effectively 100% guarantee, rid a vehicle from COVID-19. And the answer is a very simple one.
Fire.
Yes, well, fire, that works.
Burn it.
How do you rid a vehicle of COVID-19 without damaging the vehicle? And I think the answer is...
Well, you just park it up for 3 days. That's been the advice from day one.
Well, exactly. And do you need the help of a valeter or detailing products to do that?
From a magazine point of view, yes, of course you do. Of course you do. No, I think we've looked into this over and over again for the last 6-7 weeks, and I think the advice, the only surefire way to make sure the car is decontaminated is to park it up. There's no denying that. You can go hell for leather cleaning it with all sorts of different products and sanitizers and disinfectants, but the reality is, if you just park it for 3 days first, you're just eliminating that risk.
And that works for everybody who isn't using their car daily. That's the issue, I suppose, is if you're working as a volunteer or got essential work, etc., and you've got people coming in and out of the car, your best bet is, what we've been saying at least, is that you can reduce the presence and, by no means guarantee that you can get rid of it, because you're just opening yourself up to all sorts of trouble and potentially killing somebody, because if they say my car's free and then a vulnerable person sits in car, gets corona, then it's not particularly marvellous. So the key is all in the terminology, and I think it's a good idea to be offering deep interior cleans and to help sanitize car to reduce the risk of transferring the infection on and keeping that R number below the magic 1.
Yeah, I think so. The very early on, Ian and I Ian actually spotted it. We were looking into the fact that surfactants themselves are actually the key to all of this. So the advice to wash your hands regularly was a bit of an insight into the best process of approaching a vehicle. You saw some crazy info, didn't you? Really early on.
Well, there was a lot of stuff going around early on, but none of it had any studies, any scientific backing to prove it. So while you could say one way or another that I think it was one of the first came out with G101 saying that this is going to kill COVID outright. Now that's a pretty bold claim, and the science is behind saying yes, a surfactant will destroy this fatty lipid outer layer. But none of these people have actually put coronavirus under this particular coronavirus. There's something we need to sort of quite early on as well, calling coronavirus, was using it as the generic name for COVID-19.
Yes.
But no one's actually put it under the microscope to say, yes, this has demonstrated it's killed it in all conditions on all surfaces.
And what they have been doing is a lot of them are tested against SARS, which is COVID-2. And I think one thing is that, yes, the virus has proved very difficult for us to kind of take on, so to speak, as a country, but as a cell, if you like, or I mean, a virus isn't quite a cell even. It's again, you can't kill it because it's not alive, but to actually destroy the structure of a virus, it's not bulletproof. It's an enveloped virus that can be killed with really quite straightforward different products, be that surfactants, be that 70% or so IPA and above, or various other sort of really nasty disinfectant or nasty sounding.
Stiff breeze on a sunny day if the conditions are right and everything's pointing to the wind, but guaranteeing it is a different thing from saying that it will work in all scenarios.
Yeah.
And the other issue as well is because the majority of the world has been in lockdown, the labs that would usually test this stuff for sort of effectiveness are all closed. So the companies that would normally file for a certification can't.
Or they're all busy doing the research and development.
Way too busy. So it's
Well, at the time when all of these claims were being made, I looked on the Dettol website, one of the biggest brands in the world, massive for being able to remove viruses, bacteria, and even they were saying on the website, yes, it should work, but we can't guarantee it. Now, if Dettol can't come out with guns blazing saying we're going to kill the virus, how can anybody else?
Yeah, and there's an awful lot of 99.9% being bandied around, which you can totally understand.
I think that's the main issue. It's not necessarily that we don't know there are products that can do the job. It's the fact that if you're commercially advertising the fact that you will, there's the difference between can and will. Mm-hmm. You know, this can work or it could work, and selling a service that will work. Suddenly there's a big
It's providing false certainty to people.
Yeah, there's a massive shift in liability there because you're offering a service that, even though it doesn't say this guarantees it will, it's almost a...
Yeah, and well, the other thing is in a test tube where you can drench the virus, if I'm even using the right tones, with a particular chemical, you know, there's a better chance of it killing. If you've got virus molecules, or whatever you want to call them, embedded in a fabric which is only being lightly dusted with something, it's got much less actual physical contact with the disinfecting product, the solvent, and as a consequence, you know, it may work in a test tube, but it won't necessarily work in a car.
Well, this is something that I looked into recently because there's a lot of misappropriation of additives. So there are antibacterial or antiviral additives that are added to woven fabrics and things like that. We've seen a brand recently, I won't mention names, but they're advertising an additive that they're adding into their interior cleaner that will get rid of the virus, or it'll break down the virus. The issue is the guarantee is on the additive in its basic form. We had somebody comment on a Pro Detailer Instagram post recently from America, and he said that he uses an American branded cleaner or disinfectant, and it's guaranteed to work. Yet again, you go on their main website, this is their own website, mm-hmm. and it says that when this product is added to other formulas or...
Yeah, they can no longer guarantee its effectiveness.
Yeah, it's no longer guaranteed, so they can only guarantee it as it is in the tin. It's like the old Castrol GTX Magnatec. You know, it was polarised until you poured it into an engine, and then it was earthed. So when it was sold in the
bottle,
the
they
tub,
were being honest.
It was truthful, yeah. There's no science to back that up on my count, but I've heard stories. And
pH neutral fallout removers. They're pH neutral until they react.
Meet iron, and then they go to like pH 8 or 10. Yeah, it's so it's really tricky at the moment.
Mm. I think the key is from a professional point of view, it's to protect yourself and to protect the public and be honest and be non-committal. And I think it is fair to say that you're going to bring benefit by doing a deep clean of an interior, and that will help. But that is about...
It won't smell nearly as bad for a start, so it's always good.
Yeah. Well, obviously it's nice having...
If you've got a Subaru, it cleans out the Labrador smell.
I thought that was like impregnated at the factory in Subarus, especially the wagons.
Subaru new car smell is dead.
They come with a pair of loafers and a Labrador.
I have to admit, every time I'm driving along in the Legacy Outback particularly, and I see another one coming, I'm ready to wave because Subaru people wave at each other because we're nice people, and it's normally a grumpy, later middle-aged, rather large sort of lady with dogs in the back.
It's not so much waving as flagging you down at the side of the road to see if you've got enough battery to call the RAC out.
When was the last time the Pro Detailer team was recovered by an emergency service? Was it?
Who was driving on that occasion?
That's it. That's why I remember. I was driving.
You were driving a car.
Your car?
You broke my car, basically. The car had been perfectly fine, hadn't skipped a beat since I bought it. You drove it for all of 45 minutes, and it died.
And no, it's totally my fault that the auxiliary belt came off, and then that stopped the alternator and the power steering and all sorts of other bits and bobs.
Fine when I stopped driving.
Just to point out that my vehicles have a 100% track record for all Pro Detailer activity so far.
We haven't been on a track.
We have done a couple.
We have
of
actually.
Oh, yeah.
We have actually.
You're right, yeah.
We have. We did the Nordschleife in Fritz.
And what happened? Did the car break?
It.
Well, yeah, it did, didn't it? It broke.
Well, I wouldn't say it
broke.
broke.
No, it's not. It broke the second. There was the second time on that trip it broke, wasn't it? Because how much did you have to spend on brake discs when we arrived in Germany? £1,600. Euros. Sorry, euros. So
well,
that's £1,600 now.
Well, to give you an insight, we set off in Fritz at about 2 in. I just got back from the Scilly Isles at 11 o'clock the night before. We set off to pick Ram up of Colourlock in London, and I got us to the Channel Tunnel, at which point, having been on the road for God knows how long, I just fell unconscious in the back seat.
And then, at that point, me and Ian took the jump seat and the driver's seat and had to listen to Christa Berg on repeat for 7 hours.
It wasn't on repeat. There were 6 CDs in there that just
felt
happened
like it was on
to
repeat.
all be Christa Berg. So it did sound a bit samey, perhaps. But and then by the time I woke up more or less cuddling Ram, which was awkward.
For who?
For both of us, I think. You said something like, I can't breathe. And then it turned out that you'd already VMAXed the car and walked my brake discs, which were fine when I was in England. But in France, they suddenly went all wibbly-wobbly.
I think James is the only person I've ever seen who's got white finger from holding onto a steering wheel.
And of course, it's got an RS6 brake conversion, so the 2-piece brake discs are terribly expensive. And we turned up at an official Audi dealership in, what was the name of that town? Göttingen. And we literally, it turns out the idea that every German speaks English is not true, because basically 3 of us turned up waving GoPros around, shouting "Fritz ist kaputt." And of course, Fritz is what I call the car because it's my big black German. However, in Germany, it would appear that that's probably not a totally sensitive name to be bandying around. And the staff looked terrified as we 3 crazy English people wander in shouting "Fritz ist kaputt." And anyway, they identified what I told them was the problem after they'd done a thing and saying that it needs new discs, and they wanted new pads, and they wanted €2,700 for pads, discs, and something else that they'd found was wrong with it. I bravely bartered that down to €1,600 and to be fixed that day or the following day, which they did.
So sorry, there was more wrong with it than just the brake discs. What else did they want to replace?
The pads.
Yes. And there was something else.
Oh, I remember, because they put the old pads back in.
Yes, because I asked them to.
Them saying it was against
law.
TUV.
Yeah.
You're like, it's fine, we're from England, we don't worry about such details, put the old pads back in.
That's pretty much
It's
what
like
they
the temporary
said.
passport, it's okay as long as you're driving home.
Yeah.
They did say it's against German law, and I said, well, that's all right, we're British. And there was not one laugh in the house. So they duly did it, and then we spent a couple other days trotting around Europe, but we ended up on the Nordschleife, and I've never driven the Nordschleife, and I was a bit nervous to drive. Nordschleife already, and so James took the wheel. James has done many laps in various different cars on the Nordschleife, and
was this the highlight of your experience, James? Is it in general on the Nordschleife? Have you had anything better than Bert's S8?
What, than Fritz?
Yes.
He's given me puppy dog
Shall we
eyes.
just move on from that question?
It was probably one of the most enjoyable laps I've done, because it was
watching Bert cry as you crossed the finish line.
There was Bert and I, and then we had Petri from Apex as well in the car, and his girlfriend at the time, Annie,
who was very kindly sent us some ceramic brakes, just so we can do some testing on those. So thank you for those.
And a boot full of camera kit as well. We were fully loaded. I'm coming up with the excuses here. And
there's no excuses. I mean, it's a big old bus. There were 4 of us in it. We had yellow flags out.
We
But
did
either
have
way,
yellow
it was
flags.
still really good fun.
It was good fun, and I think it was about 130 miles an hour that you put the foot on the clutch, and there was a bang, and then there was no clutch.
There was some clutch.
There was some clutch,
Not enough.
not enough clutch to actually, change gear. And we did overtake a race-prepared hot hatch of some description, but it had stopped, so it was easier to overtake than we thought. And I can't remember the time. It was about 12 minutes, wasn't it, in the end?
Yeah, it was something like that.
So,
but like I said, there was an accident on circuit, so we did have to slow down for.
Yeah, we did yellow
We had to
flags.
slow down for at least 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been
least
a
3 minutes.
9-minute time. And to be honest, if the clutch had held out and we had,
Tyres
and the
and
tyres
brakes.
and the brakes were all right because they had the new discs on by
You
then.
don't remember how hot they were when we got back and how much they smelt.
Well, I felt the alloy wheels looked good in red. It was that kind of luminescent. So yeah, no, that was our Nürburgring experience. But I think Fritz performed admirably in the situation. And then bear in mind that we hopped him in and then drove. Where did we drive after that? We went up to the Netherlands, didn't we? We ended up.
Obviously, Justina, didn't you? After that,
We did.
Yeah. So the following day we were.
We went to Amsterdam, didn't we?
Yeah, we stayed just south of
car wash
Amsterdam.
Yeah,
So we
went
went.
to the car wash show in Amsterdam, which was.
at which point I'd already hopped on a flight back from Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Noped out of there.
Ian had decided that 12 and a half hours in Fritz was far more than he was prepared to do.
After it nearly ate my passport.
Yeah, well, I thought that was a ploy. So we're coming back from the show, wasn't it? It was from the
It was from Decon.
Decon show, and we were taking you back to Frankfurt Airport, and then suddenly you started making strange squeaky noises in the back of my car, and I'm like, oh, not this again. And it turned out that your passport, we thought you'd left it at the hotel. We stopped at services.
I was 99% sure that I had it in my pocket, and every sort of minute or so that dropped a percentage until we were about 80, so we had to pull over at the petrol station and try and find it. And eventually, I think James went up to his elbow into the back seat.
Put on my surgical sleeve.
Proper PPE was worn and necessary, given what I keep in the back of my car.
Fished out along with a couple of blowpipes and some tin foil for some reason in the back of there from the.
A set of micro scales and a.
From previous owners, I have, So yes, that was an exciting time.
But we, how did we got into this topic anyway? So we did.
We were just saying
we
that
did
Bert's
complete-
cars are worse than mine.
In theory, my own personally owned vehicles have a 100% proven record of getting us there and back with no hiccups so far.
Yes, that is true. And to be fair, Betty, the last time we did the Euro Tour, Betty got us there and back, and it was a bit smoky because of the water injection system. You'll know about this. It's just like the BMW M3 competition when they put water injection. Betty, the Subaru Legacy 2.5i, naturally aspirated car.
Is it not called a head gasket breach?
That is another word for it, but I like to call it water injection because
Okay.
effectively it's putting water into the combustion chamber, which creates white smoke.
So you're 2 for 2 on head gaskets and you're 1 for 1 on bottom ends.
Yeah.
It's not that much maths. There's only 3 cars.
There's 3 cars, only one bottom end's gone. And in fairness, Boris's compression was also after 300,000 miles and a lot of valve wear and stuff like that. So he's had the head's been skimmed and 3-way ported and all the rest of it, because obviously it's all about power.
Whenever I think of Boris's compression, I just think of when it finally goes to the scrapyard and they crush the bloody thing.
That's a very cruel and unkind thing to
It's
say,
gonna happen.
and I don't much appreciate that. Ian?
Do you want a tissue?
It's not,
We'll always talk about Boris.
He's not crying.
yeah, it's not that sort of podcasting for it. So anyway, let's get back on topic.
Let's back on topic. What topic do we want to go back to? Do we need to go back on to COVID, or have we all had enough talking about COVID?
Oh, God, yes. 3 months worth.
That's the.
There's lots of topics we can talk about in relation to COVID, but let's not
I think we can-
oversaturate.
We can probably spread them over about 10 podcasts.
And we've just lost the last listener, and it was my mum.
I didn't say which 10. It's going to be a roulette.
So one thing I think we should do on each and every podcast is something quick and product related. So, what are people's favourite products, favourite new product, or most underrated product? So I'm just looking at my colleagues to see if somebody's had a thought. So at the moment we've got blank look. So I'm going to go out there.
Go on. Best one that I've seen in since January is still going to be when we went up to Labo, and I'm still blown away by Veritas.
Veritas, which was Veritas is
It's their panel wipe. It's a bit of a rescue aid, and it's what blew me away about it was how much time it gave you to correct any high spots you find after putting on ceramic coating. I think there was a bit of ceramic left on the test panel that had probably been on there for a couple of days, and the whole point behind Veritas is it will take off the excess but not remove the actual ceramic the bonded layer, as it were.
Yeah. No, well, it's a pretty unique product as well. The only thing I can think of is the optimizer from Nanolex is the only thing that kind of comes close to it in terms of feature. But apart from that, I can't think of any other products. You know, I've got to be careful before I call anything unique if it's not unique, but I can't think of anything else.
Well,
that works
it's kind of a trick that you've had for quite a long time with ceramics, using effectively the carrier solvent from a ceramic to remove excess high spots. But a product that does it standalone and doesn't damage the bonded layer, it's not something we've actually knowingly found, tried, used before. So, yeah.
I mean, in theory, the way like Nanolex Optimizer works, in theory, it could do the same thing. But I don't think they market it that way. I think they market it as an application aid for it. But for me, the product that impressed me the most recently, when we were at the car wash show in Amsterdam, just a quick mention, did you even know you could get business clogs?
No, I did not.
It was amazing, wasn't it? Gloss black wooden clogs for business use.
Worn with a suit.
You just put red into the black there, and they're my sex clogs.
But we bumped into Nasiol when we were at that show, and we had a really nice chat with them. A really interesting brand, actually.
And where are they from? They're from...
So they're a Turkish brand, but their production, I think, is moving to, or they're opening a production site in the Czech Republic.
Yes.
But Ian and I had a chance to use their top ceramic coating.
The name of which completely escapes me now, because it's lesser than 4 and 3 numbers, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I
think it's an R number, but we're getting off of R numbers.
Kind of like R2D2, but
yeah,
not.
I couldn't even begin to guess at the moment. Ian's going to Google it. But we put it on a Volvo cross country, something like that, and it was astounding. Application was finicky. I will say that it was finicky, but within about 30 minutes, the gloss levels were off the chart, more than anything we'd ever seen from a coating.
And slickness as well was just crazy.
Yeah, it's insane, absolutely insane. So definitely one to watch out for. I think supply in the UK is going to be tricky, but
there is a importer, I thought, for Nasiol already somewhere.
Yeah, who was it? I can't remember.
No, name escapes me. I'm not going to throw names out randomly. But
yeah, we can have a look and post in comments or something like that underneath.
But yeah, that was very impressive. And attached to that, they're wet wipes for the windscreen.
Yes.
Which I think they're going to be featured in this mag, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when you put that on your car, you're in a good mood for about 3 days, which I've never seen anything do.
Well, it's still on now. I mean, so to give you a bit of an insight, it comes in a little box. You get 3 wet wipes. One's a cleaner, and then 2 are applicators that are impregnated with the sealant, and it's a hydrophobic glass coating. And it's enough to do a windscreen, but if you do it quickly, the process doesn't kind of allow you to do more than 1 window, but if you had 2 packs, sure, it would throw them on the street for my homies. It was incredible. I mean, you clean the windscreen with 1 wipe. You applied the second wet wipe to half the windscreen, spread it all over, and kept buffing until it vanished. And then you used the other applicator to do the other side of the windscreen. Same again. Apply it wet and keep going until it dries and you buff it off. And it is rock solid. I mean, when did we apply that?
That was going to have been February.
Yeah, February, March, I'd say.
So it was earlier than that. I thought it
could have been earlier than that, yeah.
But either way, I mean, so far it's done 3 months, definitely. I use a lot of screen wash at the moment because driving around, not at the moment, but usually around Cheshire and Gloucestershire.
You're a regular squirter, I've noticed, as a passenger.
I am a regular squirter.
Yes.
Yeah, insects are horrendous, and the Seat Leon is about as aerodynamic as a brick. So.
Oh, I don't know.
And it's mega. So for me, the Nasiol, they call clear wipes.
I've just found the name of the ceramic we're using, just for if you're looking for NL272. Glass Shield is the.
Are they the wipes? Because they do the coating on its own as well. But yeah, it's Glass Shield wipes, I think they're called. Yeah. But yeah, so for me, the 2 Nasiol products were definitely one to investigate.
Well, while these guys were using top-end ceramic coatings, these guys are very experienced with those. I'm much more of an amateur. And my product that I was really excited by fairly recently was the Meguiar's all-wheel cleaner, which is a wheel cleaner and a bleeding fallout remover. So it's generally got the two elements in, rather than just being a fallout remover or just a wheel cleaner.
Bleeding fallout removers.
Bleeding fallout removers.
Come round here.
Typing off the FE3. Yeah. And
Essex Ian's making an appearance.
yes.
And redder by the minute.
I have to admit, I was really impressed. It really doesn't smell too bad at all. You can tell it's an iron remover if you taste it, but try not to taste it. It gave me a hell of a headache. It's
that would be very hard with the PPE that you were wearing anyway, wouldn't it?
No, I took the mask off to actually sip it.
Oh right, okay.
She's a straw.
Yeah.
Or you can cut your mask in the middle like that one in America. You can just open it.
Better flow rate as well.
Oh, they make it too difficult to breathe, so I cut a hole in it. That's a good idea.
Did you see a photo of somebody who made their own COVID mask with a pair of jeans at the fly, so they can just open the zip and have a drink?
Sounds like a GIMP mask, Ian.
Well,
yeah.
different size.
So with that, it's a simple matter of just spraying on all four wheels, just go around them one by one, and then come back and agitate with a brush, and then rinse off. And I was just really impressed as a sort of a one-hit wonder on when it comes to cleaning wheels. I was really impressed with that. I tried it on Boris's wheels, which are old school and pretty pitted and nasty anyway, but they made them look much, much better.
Another brand which we sort of stumbled upon. I say stumbled upon. I knew the guys from previous ventures, but we bumped into them at Waxstock, didn't we? We met Zvizzer
Originally, yep.
And it's a bit of a tricky one because we want it to be a retail brand. We want everybody to get their hands on it, but it is very much geared towards the professional user, isn't it? The whole range, really.
It certainly. I mean, it starts with the pads and the compounds, which is going to be the kind of the more advanced side of any product. And I think maintenance products are coming in, aren't they? And
I think that there was definitely mention of it later in sort of beginning of this year. So I think they are on their way, or they are already in some places. But as far as the polishes and pads go, they are something else, aren't they? From what we've seen.
No, I do. I'm a big fan of the the Dooley pad, the wool one for the DAs.
The purpley bluey
I'm
one.
sure they're called a Dooley or something.
Oh, maybe. But yeah, so basically is it 100%? Is it 100% wool, or is it a synthetic wool mix?
I haven't been in a detailing unit for the last 2.5 months, so I can't.
I think it might be a synthetic mix, but it's foam backed, so it's similar to the. What were they called? They were the men's Scholl Soft Touch wool pads, weren't they? They were the first ones I saw, which were the white wool pads that had the orange foam back. Mm-hmm. So very similar to those.
Well, similar to the microfiber pads you get.
Yeah. So it's got the foam back in, and then you've got the wool on top.
I mean, with Zvizzer, what impresses me is the real expertise, particularly in the pad construction and the knowledge. I mean, the background story we won't go into now, but there's long experience in detailing and paint correction, and that shows through in the pads. And I think it's a genuine kind of new entry to the market, if you see what I mean, rather than just a new brand.
And their affordability for the pads as well.
Yes, they're really
ridiculously affordable. And there is a new line coming out apparently at some point.
Yeah, so. ZZ or something.
Sure, we'll get a bit more news on that in the next couple of.
I mean, every girl loves a sharp dressed man.
Probably all my ZZ Top impressions involve sort of hand gestures and movements, which don't really work on a podcast.
Yeah, ZZ Top's a bit after my time, really.
For those under 40, it's similar to the dab, but at waist height.
And for those over 30, what's a dab?
Well, at the very beginning, one thing I think we probably ought to touch on is we mentioned how we met Zvizzer, because I went over and talked to the lovely late Zoltan on stand, but is at Waxstock this year. Sadly, has been postponed until the 18th of July 2021, and I totally understand it's due to COVID.
Out of their hands, frankly.
Out of their hands, exactly. And if anything, it gives more time to prepare for the next one. And I think, if anything, I think the 2021 show has the opportunity to be a bit different because they've had 2 years to prep for it rather than one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, well, I don't know. It should be, but I think they're going to make a big thing of it. I mean,
it could have the Glastonbury effect. This is its furlough year, the Farrow year. What was it?
Fallow.
Farrow.
The only Farrow in the house here.
It's the Fallow year. They're letting the Coventry fields recover for a year, and
then they'll
back next year.
To continue the analogy, they'll drill it hard next year.
I was going to do something about Beyonce, but yeah, sure.
That was a farming reference.
No, mine was also
Yeah. Well, don't get me started on power harrows.
First podcast, and Bert is on to farming.
Farming and Subarus, just my sort of thing.
Farming Subaru.
We
just plough them into the field.
In the next podcast, we'll have a new host.
Get on the country file pods.
And I'm just going to do a little shout out. We have many tickets for Waxstock, and we'll be making them available to our listeners and readers in due course. So
There are
keep an ear out.
possibly some European events going ahead, though.
It's the smaller ones, isn't it?
Yeah, so we, as a lot of guys know from reading the last magazine, we went out to Decon and saw Maritz and Nico. They
Autolackaffen, the paint monkeys.
Yeah, the paint monkeys, or detailing monkeys.
Detailing monkeys.
It is paint monkeys, isn't it? Lack.
It is paint monkeys.
I think in German, lack means lacquer, paint,
Top coat.
surface,
Everything. Well,
polish.
Yeah. Well, it's polytow, isn't it?
Gardening.
Yes.
There's probably an 18-syllable long German word for it, because they just chuck all the words together and just make one long word, because much
Or we
easier.
can just call it lack. So yeah, we have kept in touch with those guys. They have basically said that at the moment, Decon is still going ahead. The date has been pushed back to September, and it's because in Germany they've put a limit on events.
1,000 people?
Yeah, so in the UK we have 0. All events have been cancelled so far.
Unless they're all within your own household. So
Yeah,
some gypsy families may do well.
Yeah, with one other person if you're outside. But in Germany, because seemingly they can follow some sort of order, they can
Well, I mean,
wear masks everywhere.
in scale as well, is that last year Decon was about, we reckon, 300 people or so came through the doors.
I think
It was 350 to 400 in the end, wasn't it? Because they had a few people sort of sign up for tickets the night before.
Yeah, I think so. I think they had to keep it under 500. I think that was the limit. But it's going up to 1,000.
Because they're getting extra hall as well, aren't they? They're getting the hall with that...
yeah, with a private
what's the single
collection.
headlight Citroen called?
The single
Yeah,
headlight.
the single headlight DS.
Well, a DS19.
With the 19? I can't
I think so.
I just remember the Kawasaki GPZ Turbo.
The turbo bike, yes.
That's the only
It's
thing
awesome.
that stood out from that collection. Mainly because there were so few BMWs, which was incredibly offensive.
But weirdly, there was things like a Rover 100 and a Bogo Ford
Well, there was
Fiesta
the-
Mark III.
There was the A2 chassis suspended, the all-aluminium A2 chassis.
Do you know another Audi with an all-aluminium space frame?
That's as interesting as that? No, I don't. I really don't.
The Audi A4
No.
DTM car.
Well, yes, DTM car, but that was a bit different. I think you'll find that the Audi D2 had the Audi space frame, the D2 A8. But anyway, shut up. The other thing is there was a show in France, and they said that I think they did go ahead. It was just before lockdown, and they said that they were able to just squeeze under the 3,000 limit that they had on the venue. But I'm yet to see any photos.
Just get that transmission rate up a little bit more just before.
Yeah, just give it a running start.
By the way, Ian is allowed to make French jokes because he's effectively French now.
Yeah, well, I'm multi-race, so I can't be racist because I'm part Irish, part English, part Norwegian, and a little bit Welsh. So
And I can't be racist because I hate everybody the same.
Well, yeah, we all well, apart from Ian, because you're mixed race as well, so we're pretty safe.
Yeah,
on
I'm
that.
like a can of beans.
Hey,
Heinz 57 blend.
I'll tell you what, I actually spent some time in front of the computer on Ancestry, going through my family history. Turns out most of my family are either from Leicestershire or Ireland. And then they went over to Pennsylvania.
Do you stand to inherit Sealy power tools if something goes wrong? That's all I want.
That's
Yes,
the
my
only
dad's got
reason
like 5.
That's not the evidence that I base my friendship on, but you know.
Yeah, we were under the assumption that we'd have a never-ending supply of LED stand lights and 75-kilogram machine polishers.
If you go to sealyjacking.com, it's not carjacks.
What is it?
Moving on.
So, on that note, I suspect we draw things to a close. And, well, thank you very much for listening. If indeed you did listen, we're probably just talking to ourselves at this point. And we will, I'm sure, put another broadcast out in the not too far distant future. Thank you very much.